When we're inside, we'll definitely have to put a little more time on the inside of this place to be ready for these type of situations. But it'll probably just blow over the storm, and we'll wish we were outside, but we got to be wise. So I'm going to go ahead and start off our sermon. We're in a sermon series called The Last Days, and right now there's more Christians, with the last days, there's more Christians being persecuted today than ever before in the world. We think we're persecuted because somebody says, you can't have a Bible in school. We think we're being persecuted because people maybe make fun of Christians at the bar or something, or somebody at work says something terrible about God or Jesus, and we feel like, boy, we are persecuted. There's brothers and sisters of ours all the way through the world, in the Middle East and in India and other places that are, in China, that are losing their lives, being put in prison for the rest of their lives. I mean, you're talking about like Paul and the original disciples and original believers, the kind of persecution they had. There's more of that today than there ever was. In the last 2,000 plus years, there's more persecution today than there's ever been, more than any other time. More than when the Romans beat, crucified, and threw the Christians to the lions. And see, the world persecution of Christians is at all-time high, and like I said, one's in the Middle East now. So let's look at some facts about this. Now, about 100 million of our Christian brothers and sisters live in a place where they face the threat of discrimination, intimidation, torture, and persecution, even death. That's 100 million Christians in the world today. We don't have anything to cry about, really, as far as Christianity and persecution right now. We need to be more supportive of our brothers and sisters throughout the world. So that's 100 million. And the International Society for Human Rights and a secular organization released a report that said 80% of religious freedom violations in this world are directed against Christians. That's of all the other religions throughout the world. 80% of them are against Christians anymore. And it goes against what the media narrative is. They think like Christians are persecuting everybody else. But it's actually just the opposite. The rest of the world is coming down. Other religions and things are coming down on Christians. And it's estimated 70 million Christians have died. 70 million. I was talking about this yesterday. 70 million Christians have died for their faith throughout the last 2,000 years. But probably what you don't know about is that half of those people died in the last 100 years. 35 million people have died for their faith in the last 100 years. That'll blow your mind, and it's just ramping up. Probably in the last 10 I could give you figures. That's nearly half of the 70 million. And so 35 million people died the first 1900 years of Christianity, and then another 35 million have died in the last 100 years. So that tells you things are intensifying on the other side, from our side and the other side, trying to bring us down. That every 5 minutes a Christian somewhere in this world dies for their faith. Every 5 minutes. Since we've been up here, that means that 3 Christians have just died for their faith. And we're like taking a little bit of razzing from the guys at work, or people on TV protesting and saying things about Christians. When they do that, they're not doing that right now so much, but we think we're being persecuted. So that's one of the most underreported stories on the planet. They don't want it to be that. They want everybody to be riled up against the Christians. So we're at that point. So the Last Days sermon we're on right now is a sermon series called The Last Days, and many people have been asking, is this the last days? I've got guys at work asking me. There's like that floating out there. People are asking if it's the last days. And people that have been Christians before, like me, I was a prodigal, they're kind of coming back too. They're like, want to hear more about it. That's why I brought up the fact of this sermon series, that people would hear about the last end days, because we need to know what's going on before us. We may or may not be in that time right now. But one thing about it sure looks a lot like it, so it's worth talking about. So it's going to be a 6-part series about the last days. It's about Jesus when he preached an entire sermon on the Mount of Olives. He was talking to the disciples that he's preaching a sermon on. It's called the Olivet Discourse, if you want to be fancy, big fancy word. Well, we're talking about the Olivet Discourse at Biker Church right now, and we're going to go into all that. But for you who weren't here last week, we have 2 pieces of information for you that if you want them. We've got a Bible reading plan, and we also have a timeline of the last days. So you can get that media, and you can look and see the timeline of things happening, kind of see where we're at right now in that timeline. That's an important thing to know. If we're approaching the last days, no matter where we're at, we know kind of where we're at. That's good to know that, because you'd be surprised probably to find out how close we are to that time period, the very end timeline, in the tribulation, 7-year tribulation. So what does the Bible say about the last days? Let's look at Matthew 24 and see what he says about it. We'll start with verse 9. It says, "Then you will be arrested persecuted and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. And many will turn away from me and betray me and hate each other. Sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. It's a lot like these times, isn't it? But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world, so that all nations will hear it, and then the end will come. So, if you ask me, I think we're kind of got that. People, don't care about anybody else. They're lovers of self, and they don't care about everybody else. It's all me, me, me all through the world. They're persecuting Christians like never before. We don't realize that here because we're not being persecuted to that length right now. But the rest of the world is. There's 35 million in the last 100 years. That's a lot of people to die for their faith. That's people dying for the faith. So in America, we know we're being pressured, but we're not yet persecuted. There's things going negative. It's been like a popular thing to be a Christian in America. Well, I got news for you. It's probably going to come it's already becoming less popular. And it's going to become very unpopular before it's all said and done doing these battles. It's going to be very unpopular throughout the world. So we don't think that the word persecution fits us Americans right now. We're still living in a land where we can practice our religion. We don't have to have underground churches and stuff, like a lot of people in China and other places had to do that. So Christians here do face a lot of silent repression and silent pressure from the other people from the world. But right now, what we're facing is you can't really talk about Jesus at work. They don't want you to bring religion into anything, unless it's another religion. Then you can talk about that because that's protected. If that's offensive, you could get written up for talking about your Christianity at school or work or college or places like that, at the sporting events, right? Christians are a group of people in America that you can make fun of, and no one says that's not right. You can put the cross in a vat of urine, and that's all funny, and freedom for everybody. But try doing that to the Quran and see what happens. So Christianity is like everybody's kind of out to battle that a little bit. You can get invited to a wild party and you don't go, right? Because it's like a sinful type of thing. It's going to the debauchery. It's going to go on there. Many of us have been there. But if you don't go now, everybody's going to make fun of you and razz you about it because you don't go there because of your beliefs. You're pressured to stay silent about what you believe in, right? We all got to shut up, and we can't offend anybody. We can't tell them what the Bible says when we offend somebody. You can lose your job if you publicly shared what you believe. All of us have decided if we're going to be involved with the school sports thing on Sunday morning. They make all these things on Sundays, so it's hard to go to church. We have the girls in swimming. You know what I mean? And they want every day of your life. And if you can't take Sunday off and go to these swim meets, then you can't go to them. You have to pick between the two. And you want your kids, kids mean a lot to you. But you have to make a choice. We shouldn't even have to make a choice. Sundays should be free. It's a Christian country, and we should be able to have Sundays to go to church, everybody. So the reality is that what they want Christians to just do is just shut up and blend in and conform to everybody else. And we got to make a stand. That's what this scripture's saying, is that we basically going to have to make a stand at the end here. We got to stand on our beliefs. And people are going to hate us for it, not because of us, but who we follow. They don't actually hate us. I got guys that are friends of mine, but they hate Christianity with a passion. See, atheists try to convert people to their side, and other religions do the same thing, but not Christians. You can't go around converting people anymore. That's just not a popular thing to do. We have to take a back seat in things in this nation. So we're getting repressed a lot. So we got to get ready for more and more pressure, because we're going to feel it. And we're definitely in the end times in that aspect. We may not be where the Lord's come to pick us up yet, but we're definitely going through repression in this once Christian country. You don't got to go back but a generation or two, and grandma went to church and everybody went to church, in this country, the majority of people. Now all of a sudden by the way, there's kids being born that won't even hear about Jesus, won't even hear Christianity from their families at all. And it was just 2 generations ago, like the majority was going to church. So why they want to repress us, we'll talk a little bit about that. And John 3:19 says, God's light came into the world, but people love the darkness more than the light, for their actions were evil. And many people want to many people want to stay in the darkness of that sin. See, they like their sin, they embrace their sin. I was there, I'm a prodigal. You get in that sin, you want to have your sin and be right with God both. You want to have the pleasures and the things of the sin in your life, and you want God to be happy too. Like, why can't we all just be friends and be happy, and it can't be that way. My life's better now. Nothing good came out of that. Maybe a temporary happiness, but it never lasted very long. But people embrace their sin, they celebrate their sin. But Jesus came to reveal our sin in our lives, not to punish us, not to procure us Persecuted. Not to come down on us for it, but to show us a better way, that we can have a better life. And once he knows you got sin, he don't beat you up. He just helps to lead you to a better life. He's got a better life for you. Jesus came to reveal our sin. And before the removal must come the reveal. You got to be revealed what's in your life that's wrong. And we got to bring it out into the light. That's the only way I've ever dealt with it. We were talking about my cussing and stuff earlier today. All those things, I had to bring them out before the Lord. All my dark secrets, all my anger, all my bitterness, all my spirit of offense. And people, I got to bring it out into the light. But we want to skip that part nowadays. We want to go to just being a Christian and not drag all the stuff out of the cellar, right? Like cleaning a house out, drag it all outside and clean everything up. We want to go ahead and just run with the Christians and have a good time, and everybody joins us. We've got the brotherhood. We don't really get the spiritual aspect of it. We need to drag it all out in the light. Maybe one piece of furniture at a time. Don't do it all at once. Sometimes that can be a lot of pain. But we need to realize we got sin that needs to be dealt with in our lives. All of us do, me included. There's things I need to deal with that some must be repressing a little bit, you know what I mean? But pray to God to reveal it, and he will. See, Jesus is very, very polarizing. He was polarizing in his time, and he's definitely polarizing in our time. You can talk about God, you can talk about heaven, you can talk about religion, being a good person, but when you start talking about Jesus, man, does that get people fired up. You get opposition like no tomorrow, because people feel guilty about where they're at. And Jesus is only, in this world, Jesus is the only opposition to what people doing what they want to do. If they could just snuff Jesus out and get us to stop talking about that, everybody could be happy living their life the way they are, or at least they think they would be. You know what I mean? So you start to talk about Jesus, that's when people get really uncomfortable, because Jesus is polarizing. He's like one of the original rebels, you know what I mean? He came out and just said the truth. People don't like to hear the truth. You know, they want to hear status quo and feel good about themselves. But you can't get better until you drag it out and deal with it. A lot of people stay away from Jesus because we like living in our darkness. We like to have our own little sins and our own little problems and not bring them out to be dealt with. We're comfortable. We want things to stay just like this. We don't want the ups and downs and the craziness, but that's what life is, ups and downs. Somewhere in our minds we seem to think that if we were just more likable, then those around us would not be against us. If we just said things that were exact right way, then they'd really accept us. See, that's not true. You know, Jesus was perfect and they crucified him. So there's nothing we can do in our lives to change to be accepted by the world, because they hate the light. It's ever since sin came in the world, Adam and Eve, we've been born with sin in us, and there's only one way to get rid of that. That's to just give it all to Jesus, drag it all out and just give it to him and listen to him every day. And people want to continue in their sin. I know a lot of times you go back and forth. You got your sin and you kind of go to church, but then you're like, no, I don't want to give that up. You know, whatever that is. There's been a lot of things in my life, God knows. And we all got to choose whether we're going to be liked and fit in society or we're going to follow Jesus. It's going to be a battle. Let me tell you, as a Christian, you're going to face battles. If you're going to follow Jesus, you're going to get spit on. You're going to get people making fun of you. You're going to get people doing violent things to you. Now here, if you're a Christian talking Jesus, you may get your car kicked in. You might get your bike tampered with. Worse things than that, our brothers and sisters throughout the world, you might get killed because of it. But once you know the truth and how it changes your life, you want everybody to know it. So it's worth it in the end. You got to remember, it's not just this life, this vapor of life we live in, but it's our eternities we're talking about. It's other people's eternities. If we don't tell them, who's going to tell them? The ones that aren't Christians? So sin will be rampant in the last days, in which I believe we're really in the last days. My own beliefs are. And the word rampant means flourishing or spread unchecked. Sin is just going nuts out there. If you watch the news, it's crazy. 30 years ago, people would have been in a coma probably hearing this news that we're hearing today. And I myself would have probably just locked up. My brain couldn't fathom it. But sin will be flourishing and sin will be spreading unchecked. And it's going to be everywhere, and there's going to be nothing to stop it. Seems like there's nothing we can do ourselves to stop what's going on in this country, much less the world. And sin has an interesting definition in American society today. If you ask people that you work with, what is sin? And you get some strange answers. Most people won't even admit that there's such a thing as sin. It's like everybody just does what they want to be happy, and if it doesn't affect anybody else, it's cool. You know, if you enjoy it and somebody else enjoys it, it's just cool, you know. And as long as you're not hurting somebody or killing somebody or offending somebody, like tell them about Jesus. A lot of people think sin is just something that Christians made up so they can control people. The clergy and the churches made up sin so they can have control over the people and herd them where they want them and get their money and make them do what we want to do. Like a way to control people. You might say, as long, like I said, as long as you do what you want to do, it doesn't hurt anybody, it's okay. But that's not true. Does the alcoholic sin have zero effect on people around them? When you're an alcohol and you're doing stupid stuff, you're having wild times, you do crazy stuff, or you get violent, or you do dumb stuff and wreck your car, and now you're going to court, and there's all these things that's robbing your family. The people you hit, you affect. All the people around you, you affect. The crazy things you do, guilty. Does the drug addict's sin have zero effect on the people around them? And sometimes that's a long, whining sin. You're selling stuff, you're going through stuff, you don't have good judgment, or you're not working, you affect your family, you affect the people around you. Once again, you can have car problems and things like that. The person in sexual sin have zero effect on the people around them. If I'm out messing around on Angela, it's going to affect my whole family. All those other sexual sins, the ideas that put in your brain is going to affect how you do things and how you judge things. And it's going to affect everybody that's around you. Does a selfish person have zero effect on the people around them? Somebody that's selfish, everybody around them, they could help and they don't. It's all about me. And I'm not going to go there because I'm tired, or I'm not going to help you out because I got something else I need to do. They affect everybody around them. The person that lies, do they have zero effect about the people around them? Lies bring down, the church deals with that all the time. There's lies and backstabbing going on constantly, just like the rest of the world. You affect everybody around you. Sometimes you might affect somebody's entire life with a lie. The person that's jealous, in their life, has jealousy in their lives, does that have zero effect on people around you? I got jealous. I'm jealous for my wife, and I work on it. And the Lord's been dealing with me that. But I love my wife, and I had a jealous streak in me about other people. She's never given me any evidence to be jealous. It's just something I had in me. I had to get rid of, being jealous about it. A lot of guys carry that one. They finally get their girlfriend and their wife, and they're jealous, of anybody else that wants to be around them, because we want to be super protective and controlling. There's really no sin that just affects that single person. No sin in the world. It just affects me. Well, it's my sin, and it doesn't affect anybody. It affects everybody. And person that's addicted to those drugs can't be a good parent a lot of times because the drugs affect you, your finances, your ability to make choices. You're stoned and you got things going on and you don't give your kids the attention they need. Make a bad choice and the kids are running in the yard. We said many, many things. And society's got to deal with those problems. We have the problem and society's got to deal with it. The same addict won't be able to keep a job sometimes. It gets to that point where it's going to affect your job. Drinking affects your jobs, your drugs affect your job. It seems light at first, but before you're done, it is affecting it. And society's got to deal with that. There's no sin that just affects one person. And sin means that God disapproves of the action. That's what sin is. It means it's not an action He wants for us to live. He's got a good life for us, and we follow that. This is other than what He has for us. And it's not what God intended for us. He's got good things for us. We've got to realize He's the author of our lives. He's a creator of us, and He's got His will, and He's got what He created us for. And we're not walking that life, then we're doing something otherwise. And if you turn your back on God and you're doing things that are, not in His Word, then that's against His will. The Word is His will, and that's how we can use to judge our lives. Now, none of us is sin-free. Like to cast the first rock. All of us have sins, even now. We have little sins in our life we deal with. Things like eating too much, things like being mad at people, hating people. Jesus says if you hate somebody and in your mind you want to kill them, it's just like killing them. I battle with that. We all battle with different things like that. No sin is greater than any other sin. Sin is sin, and we all need to be working on it. The only way we can do it is through Christ. Us as human beings cannot clear ourselves of sin. Cussing or drinking or any of those things, and pornography, anything that I laid down, God took it off me. I couldn't do it myself.